Welcome to the Let's Talk program. And tonight I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I speak from Aboriginal land, the land of the Cammeraygal people. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and to any Aboriginal people who may be with us. I'd also like to acknowledge that this land is unceded always, was, is, and always will be Aboriginal land. So good evening, everybody, and welcome. Tonight's topic that I've chosen is walking into the fire. And to me, this is the embodiment of a spiritual life. A spiritual life tends to entail a succession of difficulties, just as an ordinary life entails a similar succession of difficulties. However, in a spiritually informed life, these difficulties can be the source of the awakening of a deep wisdom, compassion, and balance. And certainly in a non-spiritual life, a similar thing can and definitely does happen. It can happen in a spiritual life with possibly greater speed and intensity. Just depends on the individual. And perspective is what really changes when we come into a spiritual life, way of life. Our perspective really, really changes. When we meditate, it's inevitable that our perspective on life and our worldview will change dramatically. And without finding a new perspective on our life lessons, the tendency is either to be victimised by situations or to become burdened by them. With a spiritual perspective, we can recognise that our problems are challenges that manifest for the purpose of catalysing our realisation of self, of wisdom, and of love. Regardless of the path undertaken, this tends to be how it is. It's so easy to think of difficulties as an external manifestation, and this is a trap. When we externalise our problems and our difficulties, then we're not in a position where we can deal with them, because we will feel at the mercy of these random acts of unkindness towards ourselves. And that is the victim stance. However, with practice, I can begin to take ownership, and only then, when I focus on myself and understand that this is not happening to me, this is about me, this is a reflection of me, I can then take a sense of ownership. And when I recognise that what is happening externally is reflecting the internal part of me, only then do I empower myself to take responsibility and bring change. Every aspect of my life is my own creation. Every problem that arises challenges me to find a solution and grow. Every obstacle is really a stepping stone along the way. It's just a question of perspective. And every imperfection in my being is an invitation to restore my original state of wholeness and perfection. There are a multitude of ways that I can deflect, avoid, deny, blame, anesthetize myself, and turn away from the invitation to grow. And it's the soul's own invitation. But when I accept the challenge, we call this walking into the fire. Meditation provides the fuel for the fire. And the more fuel I throw onto it, the higher the flames will rise. The hotter the burn, and the faster and greater the purification or the transformation. Now, you will have heard the word bhati, which is a Hindi word referring to extended periods of meditation. And during these periods, these bhattis, or long periods of meditation, we would place ourselves into a proverbial oven, which is just a metaphor for the fire of very intense, deep yoga or tapasya. The story goes that in this same oven, the kittens are placed in order to remain safe when the world goes up in flames of destruction. And these are the flames that ignite to cleanse the human race of its moral turpitude and spiritual insurrection. The biblical reference to this is Armageddon. And there are various references in various religious and spiritual belief systems and philosophies. And so this reference to Armageddon is a widely used term for kind of massive scale destruction of matter through the elements and natural disasters, and is regarded by many as being just around the corner. Hollywood has churned out many a movie on the subject, and of course many a sermon has no doubt been dedicated to it from the major religions. And in a spiritual sense, this is an invitation to embrace our own personal Armageddon, because where religion tends to be a lot of the time interpreted in a much more literal sense, from a spiritual perspective, because of course, you know, when we adopt a spiritual paradigm, then our perspective is naturally altered. And so we see things more in a symbolic or metaphorical sense. And so in this spiritual sense, we're invited to embrace Armageddon in a very personal way, and to see that Armageddon within the self. If we think about Dharam Raj, then it's about undergoing the Armageddon, the Dharam Raj, or the purification in the internal manner, as a purification by walking into the fire. And this fire leaps high when we confront our own phony, ego-constructed self with all of its ego defences, vices, phony role-playing, phony behaviours and devious manipulations. And this is the reality for all of us. So we need to take a good long look in the mirror and experience the incinerating flames of ego death. This is known as dying alive. In this way, to walk into the fire, into the flames of Armageddon or Dharam Raj, we are rewarded with a free pass for the express flight to the top of the mountain in India at the very end. And this, we do hear this in Raj Yoga, but actually it's a metaphor for the reward of completing my work on myself and emerging victorious from the Mahabharata, the great war of the self with the self. We don't win this war unaided, of course, but in partnership with our great divine progenitor, who rewards our courage, faith, and determination. The motto of the Republic of India is Satyameva Jayata, meaning truth alone triumphs. And, India, as we know, is commonly recognised worldwide as the most spiritual place or the most spiritual country in the world. The Supreme Court of India bears the motto Yato Dharmas Tato Jaya, meaning whence Dharma, thence victory, or where there is Dharma, or, the adherence to a deeply spiritually principled existence. Victory results from that. Victory follows. Where there is Dharma, there is victory. It is often the case that people see only two choices for dealing with their problems. One is to suppress and deny them and try to fill themselves only with light, beauty, and ideal feelings. In the long run, this does not work. For what is suppressed on the one hand, or for what is suppressed on the one hand, or one part of the body cries out from another. Suppressing thoughts in the mind will result in ulcers in the digestive tract. If we clench problems in our body, our mind later becomes agitated and rigid, filled with unfaced, unresolved, repressed fear. The second strategy is the opposite: to let all our reactions out, freely ventilating our emotions about everything, everyone, and every situation. And this too is a problem. For if I act out every emotional reaction that arises in me, all of my dislikes, opinions, and agitations, my habitual reactions grow until they become tiresome, painful, confusing, contradictory, and overwhelming. And I would use those words not just in respect to myself, but all those around me who have to put up with it. And so, this is a condition through which people will become addicted to their own emotions and just blow everything up to a point where they're unable, where they completely lose control of their emotions. And, it actually is a classified addiction, emotional addiction. So what is left? Well, the third alternative is the power of a wakeful and attentive soul, a heart willing to walk into the flames and face the difficulties in an act of spiritual surrender and of the desperate, suffering, egoic self. And I've just, I watch people go through this. Literally, this is so accurate, this description. It is so accurate. And I've watched people go through this in all sorts of situations, but especially when people are dying. And they're still in a very suppressed, repressed state. It makes dying very difficult. These are people who will hang on to the body. And they'll hang on to the body and have a tremendous, overwhelming fear of dying. And that will become very obvious to those around them who are looking after them. So Rumi put it in this way. I'm a great lover of Rumi. The spirit and the body carry different loads and require different attentions. Too often we put saddlebags on Jesus and let the donkey run loose in the pasture. I love that. So our difficulties require compassionate attention. And when we surrender them to our divine companion, our heavy burdens, whether body, mind, or heart related, become light and illuminated. Sharing those burdens with God and another human being with complete honesty, and that human being may be a trusted friend or a mentor or a counsellor, will free the soul from the inevitable downward pull into fear, darkness, and isolation. We do need to expose our fears, our shame, our deep and perhaps unspoken suffering to the sunlight and allow the light of truth in to shine on all those dark crevices inside and to begin healing us from within. Immersion in the dimension of silence supports the journey to healing and wholeness. From our apparent weaknesses, we can learn a new way. The things we do well, where we've developed a high measure of confidence, can become habituated behaviour, bringing a sense of false security. This goes for roles that I habitually play, like being over-responsible so I can feel in control, etc. So what I'm highlighting here is that these actually are old coping mechanisms, old ego defences, and they are strategically dysfunctional. As we've discussed over many past weeks, these defensive behaviours stand in the way of our psychological, emotional, and spiritual growth. When we stay in our comfort zones, which of course the ego wants to do, these comfort zones do not support spiritual growth. And so the challenge is to make an active choice to move right out of these old comfort zones and to embrace the mystery of life in the things in which I actually lack confidence, in the spaces where I feel vulnerable and where I encounter struggle. These are the only places I can grow. They require surrender and letting go. And when we allow ourselves to become vulnerable, when we get a step out of the box and embrace the unknown, new things can be born in and around us because I stop blocking the energy. I remember these old comfort zone, habituated behaviours block energy. And so when I allow myself to become vulnerable, new things are born within me and around me. And in risking the unknown, we can gain a sense of life itself in such a real, unfettered way. And this is freedom. And often people find this terribly scary. They'd rather be trapped in a box. They'd much rather be trapped in a box. You know, this is the coping stuff. This is the ego. Ego is always in boxes. So very often what we have sought is right here underneath the problem and the weakness itself. We simply have to step out of the box to see it and to experience the freedom of letting go. Meditation will bring us face to face with a longing for something or someone in a way that influences our life and choices. It could be just to a subtle extent or to a very great extent. And it will be repetitive. The longing may be something I yearn to rid myself of. But if I investigate it deeply, what I will find a yearning for is actually the opposite. For instance, for wholeness and connectedness. When I desire connection with another, I need to check whether indeed I have lost connection with myself. At our very core is a memory of completeness and wholeness. And so my longing is a reflection of this possibility. Because if I didn't have it to begin with, I couldn't have a longing for it. I can't long for something I've never known and never experienced. So when I open and accept my longing, when I open to it and accept it, when I dive into my emptiness in meditation and immerse myself in it, I can go right down deep through the void and locate the original wound that caused this spiritual disconnection with an aspect of my essence, with an essential state. And in this way, I reconnect to the essential state that was lost, probably quite early in my life. And so the sense of longing for someone or something and the emptiness that accompanies it, the emptiness I'm trying to fill by attaining that thing, in other words, will then dissolve. Wholeness in this way is restored bit by bit as I work on each thing. Meditation is a great place to do this work. Longing and emptiness are the signposts I need to follow. And so I hope this makes sense. And you're welcome to speak out if it does not. So judgment of others and anger that I experience towards myself, others, or situations will, at their core, hold the valuing of justice and integrity. When we work with our anger, we can change it into an effective medication. When transformed, my anger and judgment bring clarity to see what is skillful, what needs to be done, what boundaries and limits need to be established. They are the seeds of discriminating wisdom and a knowing of order and harmony. This is something I experienced very strongly when I was working with asylum seekers when I was up on, well, I experienced it for 4 years, no matter where I worked. Particularly it came to a head when I worked on Manus and Nauru. And what I experienced was this absolute moral outrage, grief and trauma from what I was every single day witnessing again and again and again. Everywhere I turned, everywhere I looked, there it was. And all I can say is it's very difficult to deal with. And, when our core values are being challenged at every turn about our human values and human rights, and when we actually can't alter that situation, when we're caring for people who are being treated in a demeaning and way that conflicts with our own value system, and we actually can't change it. It's an awful situation to be in. I say this from experience. So but within there are the seeds of discriminating wisdom and a deep knowing of order and harmony. Denial and confusion are often used as strategies in the same way to avoid conflict and cognitive dissonance and to try and find a full state of inner peace. This takes the mind and the feelings into complex difficulty. But when consciously acknowledged and accepted, they can be transformed and one of the basic tenets of the Gestalt philosophy is that when our feeling pollutes our thinking, we will be in cognitive dissonance. And that's when people are most likely to say they are confused and they don't know what to do. Because it's easier to be confused, to put yourself in the confusion trap than challenge this whole idea, this whole reality that my values are really being challenged by the situation that I am in or by the organisation that I work for, the values of the organisation I work for, and the activities of the organisation I work for, or that I am otherwise, in whatever way, affiliated or associated with or belong to. This is cognitive dissonance. It's a very uncomfortable, and people will just get lost. They will lose themselves in confusion rather than face up to the fact that they may have to give up a whole philosophy or belief system. They may have to give up a job. They may have to give up a way of life. It can be that important, that big. And so confusion and denial are the strategies that the ego will use to try and avoid this. So I would expect that most of you have already had an experience of some sort or another of this. And when we actually face it and confront it in ourselves and do what we need to do, a spacious acceptance follows. Because this frees up our life force energy. It frees up so much emotional energy and enables me to experience true peace and serenity. That's at the end of the journey. And so much energy gets blocked in this. And I think it's a particularly difficult scenario for many, many people in the helping professions and, well, people at all levels of life. But when we're dealing with human beings who are being oppressed, mistreated, and not supported by our organisation, that's a very real conflict and cognitive dissonance. And there's a lot of it about. There's an awful lot of it about at all levels of our social structures, social, political, and corporate structures, institutional structures. And so the seeds of wisdom, peace, and wholeness are within us and within each of our difficulties. And so this is why it's so important for us to have a perspective on our difficulties in which we are able to see that each of them contains the potential for awakening of a part of ourself. And our spiritual practice brings it into a lived reality. Spiritual life can open us to the reality that wherever there is difficulty lies the key to awakening, transformation, growth, psychological, emotional, and spiritual growth and serenity. Our life can change from a struggle with the polarities of success and failure into a dance of the heart. Always, always, and always, and always. It is up to me. And so I want to tell you a little story. Let's hope I've marked the place in this book. I think I have. Here we go. This is the story of a rabbi and a master. So once a young and ambitious rabbi moved into the town of a famous master. Finding no interested students, he decided to challenge the old master in public and try to win some followers. He caught a bird and with it hidden in his hand, strode up to the old master, who was surrounded by his students. So the rabbi said, "If you are so great," he asked the master, "tell me if the bird is dead or alive." And his plan secretly was this, that if the old master said the bird was dead, he would release it to fly away. And if the master said it was alive, he would quickly crush it and then open his hand, showing the dead bird. Either way, the old master would be embarrassed and lose his students, he thought. So he planned to put the old master into a catch-22 situation. And so there he stood, confronting the old master, with all the students looking on. And he said, "Is the bird in my hand dead or alive?" The master said nothing, and so he asked again, "Is the bird in my hand dead or alive?" And the master sat quietly and then replied, "Really, my friend, it's up to you." And so that's my little story for tonight. It's a good story, isn't it? Okay, so let us have any questions at this point. And so for questions, you do need to unmute yourself and please turn cameras on. So no comments, no questions, no reflections.
Okay, just a comment. I love that story about the bird and the master.
Right.
It's a great story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a good story.
The master, was very mutual, like he didn't actually say, "Oh yes, the bird is dead or alive." No?
Mm.
Yes.
And that is wisdom, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and discrimination. Mm. And what about the rest of it? Any thoughts on that?
Hi, Jude. It's Catherine. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to ask. Hi.
Hi.
If can you hear me?
I can indeed.
I just wanted to ask if going into the fire is a conscious choice, or is it something that happens? Like, do you decide that that's what you're going to do if that's the spiritual path, or is it something that happens either way?
It'll happen either way, and
Okay.
if we consciously stop ourselves going into the fire, eventually it will engulf us.
Okay.
You
so
know,
that's like our path. That's our journey, our karma, or our.
Yes, indeed. Because, look, we created all ourselves because we can either block energy or we can make a conscious choice to unblock it. It really is up to me, and it depends on my perspective. And I have seen people who have been in a spiritual life for decades and decades actively choose to use all of these blocking strategies. And I have watched their life situation develop into a massive fire that engulfs them. Mm. And this doesn't just happen on the spiritual path. You know, it will happen to anyone who continues to block energy, because energy needs to flow. And if we block it, there will be problems, inevitably. And the more we block energy and the more energy that accumulates in that blockage, the bigger the consequences will be. And if it's repetitive behaviour, you know, if the person simply is operating in a blind spot and is in denial and does not want to look, then they're going to get nuked. I mean, it's just the reality. It's happened to me. It happens to all of us at some point.
Okay.
The thing is, I think that when we are on a spiritual journey, then we are very supported within that journey to look at ourselves, because that is the spiritual journey. And when we meditate, then we do get a huge amount of support. We get a huge amount of support, not only from meditation, but also from being around people who are on the same journey. Because the group, the energy of the group will really, you know, if everybody's looking at themselves and doing that work, then it creates a morphogenic field. That's a quantum physics term, a morphogenic field. It's just an energy field. And when a morphogenic field is created and you are drawn into that morphogenic field where everyone is doing that thing, then it's much easier to do it. It's very easy to do it, and you will be drawn into that, doing that both consciously and unconsciously. And so this is why this is why it's very important on the spiritual path to have a reference group. And this is why the 12-step program is so successful internationally, cross-culturally, because that is the morphogenic field, that is the energy field that all of these groups are in, and they're all doing it together. And you know, if someone is in a group like that, they will start to deal with their addiction unconsciously, just by virtue of being around others who are doing it. And it won't be difficult. It'll just happen. And it's the same, you know, and this is unique in spiritual groups, that the impossible becomes possible and the possible becomes impossible. In the sense that, say, if someone is an alcoholic and they don't know how to stop drinking, that's not important. They just go and put their body in AA meetings. And if they do that every day for 90 days, I guarantee you they will stop drinking. They may do it much sooner than 90 days. I've seen it happen much, much sooner. And they don't know why. Now, they've literally said to me, I've stopped drinking and I don't know why, but I've stopped. And that's because they're completely supported by that energy field. And so this is why, you know, when we meditate, it's very important to have a group around us who are doing the same thing, so that, you know, we're all on that pathway together, and there's an energy field there that we create together and that we're all in. And the more people in that who are, you know, sincere and committed, the more powerful that energy field is. The level of commitment and wholeheartedness with which people are contributing to that energy field, the energy field will become so powerful. Quantum physics, it's a law of energy. And we see this, you know, we see this. The philosopher Margaret Mead said, never think a small people can't change the world. Indeed, this is the only thing that ever has. So we know a strategic number, which can be very, very small, strategic number of committed people, all working for the same thing, will have huge success.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Jude, just one more thing I'd like to comment on is I like where you said, where there's dharma, there is victory. Yeah.
Where there's truth.
Very true.
Yeah.
Truth. Yeah. Truth equals victory.
Yeah. Truth brings victory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it does. And it's the only thing that does.
Yes, true. Baba tells us every day.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, how you know, that is such a well-known statement in India.
Yeah.
But you don't hear it in the West.
Yeah.
Such a different perspective. You know, the Hindus have even at this point in time, they still have been able to maintain a perspective rooted in spiritual truth.
Yeah. And there's another thing is power of gathering. If, you know, we all meditate together, it's greater power.
Oh, the energy field is so powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just like to share one little point. When I was in Madhuban just recently, the power of gathering, this is what my example is. We sat around Tower of Peace and we meditated around 200 souls everywhere. It was just amazing, like pin drop silence. So much power, so much power.
Yes, and you've got, you know, a spectacular energy field in that location.
That's right, yeah. Thank you.
And it's been there for a long time.
Yes, definitely. It's still very powerful. Wow.
Oh, yes. You know, that energy is in the earth. It's in all that white marble. You know, it's in the entire material environment, as well as, you know, just the energy field.
Yeah.
The non-matter energy field. But it's in the trees, it's in the buildings, in everything.
everywhere. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi,
Lydia?
Jude. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed.
Yeah, you touched upon ego as well. So that's a very interesting topic. Sometimes we learn after the event that we acted out of ego, and then it's too late, right? So my question is, what are some of the early warnings that ego is taking over, and what can we do to prevent it before the
Okay.
event? So,
Well, when I develop, and this is how we develop self-awareness, is by really monitoring our own reactions emotionally and psychologically. And when I have a very strong emotional reaction to something or someone or some situation, then that's an egoic reaction. The ego reacts, the soul doesn't react, it responds. And so whenever I'm having a reaction, and sometimes, it can be a physical reaction. I break out in a rash or something like that, or I feel sick, or, I just feel uncomfortable or whatever. Obviously I need to listen to that because it's telling me that I'm having a pretty powerful reaction to something and I'm very uncomfortable. And so I need to get to the bottom of it. And, it will be, those intuitive, I love those intuitive messages because I can trust them so deeply. But, at another level, anytime I'm reacting, whether it's in indignation to something, which I totally fell into that trap yesterday in a situation I won't go into, but a moral indignation, I'm afraid that is ego. And yes, whenever I'm reacting, whether it's a big reaction or a subtle reaction, still ego. And that's how I know. And so if I'm really in my observer mode and aware of what's happening in my body, because emotions register very much in my body, in my gut, wherever, I can tighten up in the neck or my stomach can clench or whatever. And I'll feel anger rising from my gut or whatever. Once I'm in the observer stage with all this, I'm in a very good place because I can notice, yes, okay, I'm feeling angry at the moment, but I don't express it and I don't act in a reactive way. I can make a choice about how I respond to that person or to that situation, or even might be to myself.
can I just make a comment there? So sometimes we don't react externally. I think we are all very sophisticated people. We don't show what's going on, but we react internally.
Yeah.
And we take offense of the situation. So how do you control your internal reactions? External is, I think we've all learned that trick in the society. But how do you control your internal reactions?
I don't think we need to actually try and control our internal reactions, but learn from them. And the more self-awareness we have, the more we can transform what's really going on for us. If I notice I'm having, because internalizing reactions, can also be quite damaging to our well-being and to our health. not working through a situation. If we just internalise it and don't work through it, then that's no good either. It's better than losing control, in a way. But when I'm having an internal reaction, that's a sign that I actually need to act. I need to talk to someone. I maybe need to resolve something with somebody else or with some situation. And when I am able to approach that in a state of humility and, to question what's going on and to seek some sort of resolution with the other party or whoever's involved, and to state my feelings about what's happening, then it will automatically resolve for me. Because I need to say what I need to say, not in a reactive way, but in just a responsive way, a matter-of-fact, responsive way. And often when I just say, I notice that this is what's happening, and I notice that I'm having some feelings about that, and that I want to share with you. And often that's all I need to do, and that will resolve. But internalizing and not doing anything about will just cause a lot more blocked energy. And so this is why understanding the need to resolve conflict, it's actually very important to have conflict, to have those skills to do that. And even if it's not possible to resolve that conflict, once I've said how I feel in a matter-of-fact, non-reactive way, very often that's all I need to do. I will feel better. I will have resolved it for myself. And it doesn't mean the other person will change, or it doesn't mean the situation necessarily will change. However, I have unblocked energy on my own part, and that will ease tension and blocked energy within me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Good insights. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. Good question. Very good question. So anything from you, Lydia?
Oh, wow. So much. But a few of those questions at the end answered my query, so that was really good, especially the last question. So, yeah, I'm sort of dealing with a few, two people in my life and one thing that make me get angry still. So I'm actually going through that this week. I'm putting it into the fire and I'm putting it out there and meditating on it and trying to get to the bottom of it.
Good.
And not react like I do. And and your example of, what you went through where you couldn't really do anything about it is a really good example for me, because you can't change the person or the thing. You just have to deal with it. So, yeah, I'm doing that, but, it's not that easy.
And often just articulating where you stand on that situation, articulating your own values and your own value system, around that, in response to that situation, and articulating your own feelings. That can bring immense resolution for you.
Wow.
Because, you know, we don't just deal with things internally. We need to act as well. To bring things to resolution.
Okay, but when you say act, are you saying say something?
Yes, I am. To say or do something to make our position on that situation very, very clear to the other person. And of course, if you do it in a reactive way, you will give your power away to the other person where anger or, you know, conflict is involved. So it's important for us not to give our power away. And so it's important, you know, when we're reactive and losing it, then we give our power away. When we work things through for ourselves first, and defuse our own emotional reactivity, when I know what I want, it's important to say, what do I want from this? What is it that I want? Do I just want to feel at peace with the situation? I mean, we all do, really. And what is it? If I can't change the person, I can't change the situation, then I need to change how I am reacting to it and work through so that I can respond effectively to this situation. And, you know, this is something that I've done on myself on many occasions with people who are in a senior position to myself, is that I've gone and I've said, you know, I just want to clarify my position on this. I see, you know, what is happening and which way the company structure is, organisational structure is going. And that, you know, I just want to clarify that with you, these are my values, and so on and so on. And often a very constructive conversation will come from that. That is my experience. And, you know, ultimately, if that cognitive dissonance doesn't resolve one way or the other, then I'm going to have to leave that situation. And that will be the resolution. But I can clarify my position with whoever I need to clarify it with before that occurs. And that's important for me to do that, to say that, because it unblocks the energy.
That's it.
And it stops me getting stuck. And when I'm very honest about my values and my feelings with whoever is important in the situation, you know, that needs to hear that, then I'm operating in a very clean way. I'm not being reactive. I'm not projecting. I'm not getting angry. I'm not getting resentful. I'm not blocking energy. And I've done that. I've done that a number of times in my professional life. And, you know, it's not always something you do in your comfort zone because it can be weaponized and used against you. That is always. But I figure, well, I don't care. because if that's what is going to happen, then I need to leave. If I can't be here in a clean and honest way, in a situation in which I can function with my values, etc. I don't want to be in a situation where there's a whole lot of where I'm experiencing a whole lot of cognitive dissonance. We all have to make choices in those situations.
Yeah.
It's very important. And it's through cognitive dissonance that we grow spiritually, Well, it's through cognitive dissonance that we will take a high jump. And through being honest and open about our cognitive dissonance and doing something about it. And that is the only way we can bring change to ourselves. It is a very prominent way in which we grow spiritually and bring change within ourselves, and also to situations that we're in. Maybe a family situation, it may be a professional situation, it can be any situation, but that is how we do it. And so
thanks, Jude.
It's very important not to be afraid of conflict. A lot of people are afraid of conflict, and so they won't speak up. They won't do anything, and then they'll start gossiping and being resentful and backbiting and going underground and undermining other people and situations. And as we heard yesterday morning, that is really the wrong way to go, because I accumulate a lot of really negative karma when I do that. So it's much better to be upfront and honest and clean in a non-reactive way, and open about where you're at and who you are and what you're, clarifying your own position on the situation. And if someone wants to weaponize that against you and use that against you, or get rid of you or reject you or whatever, then the onus is on them. You have acted in a very clean, spiritually accurate way.
Yeah.
And I have spent a great deal of my spiritual life pondering this very thing. How do I act? What is the accurate thing to do? What is the accurate response in this situation? And, I have known myself to agonize around this when I've been placed in very difficult situations where I'm feeling a lot of cognitive dissonance, or that I'm surrounded by some sort of conflict. It may be a conflict of values, or where someone else's behaviour is very much in conflict with my values, and particularly if they have influence in that situation. This has most likely been a professional situation. I have to be honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned to be step right out of my comfort zone, and to be very honest about where I'm at with that situation. And I remember going into a work situation. I was sort of very, very pursued and headhunted for this job. And eventually I did take it. And on the very first day, I knew I'd made the wrong decision, and that it wasn't going to just go right because of the person. There was a particular personality involved who was in a powerful position. And so what I did was that I just allowed that situation to unfold. And, you know, it was the most senior person in this particular work situation who was causing the problem, and had the most unhappy staff.
Wow.
And everyone was, you know, sort of backbiting about this person and gossiping, and people were very unhappy, and with good reason. With good reason, I have to say, because that person's behaviour was so unprofessional and they had power. And
Wow.
eventually, that company was audited. They were audited and found to be misappropriating their funding.
Oh,
By the funding body. And the funding body cut their funding. And what that did, they came to me and said, we have to cut your hours. And that was my opportunity. Because, you know, I realised on the first day I've made a big mistake. How can I get out of this joint?
How long did you last?
Well, actually lasted almost 3 months. And the funny thing was, you know, within the first week of being there, I came down with glandular fever, you know, which was my defence mechanism, because I was just feeling that cognitive dissonance and that stress internally. And so I came down with glandular fever and took 3 weeks off.
So it's only 2 months, really.
And then I went to India, and that was prearranged. I went to India. Oh, no, I didn't go to India. I went to Germany. I went to do a big BK tour in Germany, running workshops and talks all over Germany, all over the country. And so I think I had a good month off. And then I went back, the same situation, and just, you know, thinking, oh, this is just so awful. And people were, you know, gossiping and backbiting and carrying on with this person. And we were having staff meetings, and I was making very, very constructive suggestions for alleviating a lot of this internecine stress and conflict. I was making very constructive suggestions about how to support a lot of the people who were working there, because the person in charge was completely unable to support them. She should not have been in the job, you know, I mean.
Wow.
And so anyway, eventually none of my suggestions were acceptable to that person.
Of course not.
And then they got audited, and they got into a lot of trouble with funding bodies, and they lost their funding and came to me and said, we have to cut your hours. So you can go part-time or you can be retrenched. And I said, so, you know, have a think about it and come back and let us know. And I said, oh, I don't have to think about it.
Retrenchment.
I'm not.
That would have been the best retrenchment ever.
And
bring it on.
Bring it on. Yeah.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. And so I said, no, I will leave in. How much notice would you like? I shall leave.
Can I go now?
And they said,
funny.
oh, look, can you give us 3 weeks to replace you or something like that? Find somebody else. And I said, yeah, sure. You know, I'm not going to leave you in the lurch. Because, you know, it's important when you're a meditator, when you are leading a committed spiritual life, you really have to think through the karmic consequences of your actions and your behaviour.
Yep.
And that's something I am extremely mindful of.
Yeah.
Because none of us want to create a whole bunch of difficult karma that we then goes, we have to then get into another difficult situation to resolve it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, who wants that? I don't.
That's exactly how I feel at the moment with this. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking I don't want to get any further or deeper into it.
Mm.
I want it settled.
Yes.
By doing the way I'm doing it.
Yes. And so, sometimes it takes time.
Yeah.
For us
that's what I know.
to bring a situation to an optimal karmic conclusion, so that we leave that situation in a very clean and clear manner in terms of karma.
Yep. Beautiful, optimal. That's a good one.
Mm.
Thanks, Jude.
You're welcome. And
Beautiful.
look, these are the things that I struggle with at times, that I can agonize over in my life. But the more I work through them, then the more experienced I become at it, and then I don't have to agonize anymore. Another situation comes up, and I'll have more experience with which to bring
exactly
myself into resolving that situation.
Yep. Yep. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
So it's good to have these discussions, isn't it?
I think so. For me, really, it's very helpful.
Yes.
And just, and then there's sort of using you like an example as well. So like you've been through it and look at you now, type of thing.
Yeah, well, it's like they say in AA, we come here to share our experience, strength and hope, because that's what helps others. And so when we're in a non-judgmental space with others, where we can share, where we're screwed up, where we're stuffed up, and where we've got it right, I think, everybody benefits. We all learn from each other's experience, and that's what's wonderful, that, we can learn from one another's experience when we're in a very clean, non-judgmental, supportive space.
That's true. That's how I learn. I love other people's experiences, and it's got to be real, and you got to see it, feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Okay, well, if no one else has got anything they want to say, we will have some meditation now.
Excellent.
And so the invitation is to let go of your thoughts and take a deep breath into the core of your being, following the energy of the breath deep within. Leaving the universe of the mind behind and retreating into that beautiful place inside. Of stillness, place that is filled with light and harmony and peace. And I immerse myself in the beauty of this place, in the serenity of my true self. And to that part of me that is completely embracing of truth, drawn always and only ever to truth. And to the honesty of just being. I feel so light. In a place of light. And where I connect with the beautiful one. Who surrounds and fills me. With the deepest, unfathomable peace and love. Wisdom and bliss. Where a moment is forever. We are merged completely. In the power and the beauty of silence. And I feel myself with power. Feeling the love. My heart takes flight, opens, Shanti.